feel like I should be doing something in these videos other than talking. But I don't do anything that's visually appeasing. Besides, it's really hard to talk and do things, at least for me. You know, I don't even know why at this point I even, like, subscribe to streaming services, because all I do in my free time is watch people do their makeup. I squish stuff on my face as fast as humanly possible and don't really care about the product, so that's not for me, but it is for me to watch. So if you're a makeup artist, make sure to tag me down in the comments so I can check out your content. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of Gigi Says What Now? Now today, if you are a Gen Xer and I say the word flowers or powdered donuts, there is only one thing that is going to come to your mind. And that would be the legendary Vcandrews. And don't worry, this is not a book review. This is the story of her life. So, a reporter once compared Vcandrews to a fairy tale. And let me tell you, if this woman's life was a fairy tale, it was written by the Brothers Grimm. This beautiful woman right here. Miss Cleo Virginia Andrews was born on June 6, 1923 in Portsmouth, Virginia. She was the middle child of three and the only daughter. And her parents absolutely loved and adored her. Her father just thought she was the bee's knees. And even though they didn't have a lot of money, he definitely took his time and care to make sure that she knew that she was special and loved, and they were so close. And all of us girls with daddy issues out there, like, so jealous. And she was a very special child. She was adorable and sweet and talented. Once in primary school, she entered an art contest where she had drawn a picture of a glass house or a house with a lot of windows, and it entered it into a contest and she won. And what she won was the chance to attend a collegiate level art class. And so she went on to the college campus in her little Mary Janes with her little piggy tails, being all sweet and cute, and she had to stack up books on the chairs just to see the instructor. Well, one of the speakers or people in attendance that day was Mr. Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, if you don't know who Frank Lloyd Wright was, so Frank Lloyd Wright was a very influential and successful architect. And he said of her, "This child scares the hell out of me." Now, okay, before we go canceling an old dead architect, let's break this down. He wasn't bullying her and saying, "This child's scary as fuck." You know what I'm saying? I think what he was trying to say was to have such talent and promise at such a young age is absolutely extraordinary. But she lived a way normal life for a young girl until when she became a teenager. She was in her middle teens when she had a little accident and she stumbled and fell down the stairs. Unfortunately, she suffered many injuries and required 2 major surgeries, and the prognosis was that she would be basically wheelchair bound for the remainder of her life. After her accident, her mother became her primary caregiver, and with that, her mother was incredibly overprotective and overbearing at times. She would keep little Cleo locked in the house and out of view, and so she didn't really get the opportunity to go out into the world or to interact with peers. She didn't go on dates. She didn't go to dances. She didn't, go to the soda shop or anything like that. She was pretty much just trapped in her house. And she said that she would pretend to be a princess in a castle, enjoying life. And she would read, and she said her favorite books were Dracula, and some of her favorite writers were like Jane Eyre. And if you've ever read Vcandrews books, yeah, that math is mathing, because she does write with a very kind of delicate sense of romanticism, but still tackles these really dark and disturbing subjects. Now, she was allowed out from time to time, maybe a nice little Sunday picnic in the sun in the yard, but her mother would do things like position her behind trees or bushes so that the neighbors or people walking by couldn't see her. stating that she didn't want anyone to see her afflicted daughter. Now, I don't know if that's just a sign of the times, because, you know, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, this is during back-to-back world wars and the Great Depression. You know, the world was definitely a different place, and people that were different in any way tended to be hidden away or institutionalized. I don't know if maybe she was trying to protect little Cleo from being bullied or picked on, or if she felt this, you know, overwhelming sense of guilt that it was her job to protect her child and she didn't. I don't know why she would feel that way, but she did. And she kept Cleo hidden away from the world for the majority of her life. So when her father died at, I think she was around 30, she became particularly sad and lonely, because he was her touchstone. He was her person. He was, you know, where she could go to, where she could still feel special and loved. And she still didn't have any kind of peer group in her life. She had missed out on dates and dances and everything that, you know, comes with the glory of youth. When she was 41, her cousin took her to Neiman Marcus to buy shoes. And it was the first time that she had been to a shoe store since she was 16. And this was the majority of her life. That's how it went. It was her and her mom locked up in her pretend castle. But she would still get up every day and she would play dress up and she would put on makeup and she would go into her world of make-believe and find the light and find the happiness and find the joy in just existing. And then when she was around 55 years old, she published her first book, a book that she had written in 2 weeks. Okay, but if you're a writer out there like me going, wait, what? It took me a year to write my first book. And then I sat on it for a year before I got the courage to put it out into the public. And she wrote this in just 2 weeks. Well, okay, when she was 17, she had created quite a rapport with one of her surgeons. And she was a really charismatic and enigmatic person and personality. So I assume she had a rapport with pretty much everybody she met. But she had a rapport with this doctor, and he told her of this true crime series. Now, I don't know if this was a patient of his or something he saw on the news or what, but he told her a story about a child that had been extremely neglected and hidden away because his existence couldn't be known to his grandparents because they would be written out of the will. So they were literally waiting for the grandparents to die in order to receive an inheritance. So even though she had a very quick pen, this story had been on her mind on and off for the majority of her life. The title of this book was Flowers in the Attic, and she dedicated it to her mother, who refused to read it. Now, personally, I would never not read some of my children's work, especially if it was dedicated to me. But this book tackles some incredibly dark subjects and dark events, so much so that I can't even mention them on this channel without getting a community violation. Community guidelines violation. Oh, I can't talk. Because it is gothic horror. Okay, so when I first read this book, I was in the 5th grade and it was popping off. Now, I know that a lot of you that are younger than me, which is probably all of you because I literally walked with the dinosaurs. Oh, my back. The majority of you are going to be like, why? This book is trash. And from the book reviews I've seen, particularly on YouTube, that's exactly what y'all say. And that's okay. Your opinion is totally valid. But when I was a kid, this book was everything. It wasn't just a trend. It wasn't just a fad. It was a pop culture phenomenon. Everybody read it. Everybody from the 5th grade through high school. We would pass it around the playground. We would be on the phone, on our rotary phone, wrapping up in the cord for hours, talking about it with our friends. This was something children in primary school would be talking about with their older siblings in high school. It was everything, and it was everywhere. But for real, why? Like, this book is not YA, and it is not suitable or appropriate for young children to be reading. So why were we reading this very adult story? I mean, maybe it could be the very simplistic and lovely artwork of a pretty house with a beautiful family of children on the cover. Maybe it was because the main characters were children as young as 5 through their teens and into their early adulthood. But I think Cleo said it best in an interview. She said she didn't, I'm paraphrasing, she didn't want to get like bogged down in details, and she wanted it to be a page turner. And I get that. I write kind of the same way, with that kind of Alfred Hitchcock way of thinking. Sorry, I know he's a douchebag, but he had this way of thinking where he thought the imagination was the most powerful thing, and he left a lot to the imagination because he thought it would make his films more scary. And I kind of do the same thing in my writing, where I'm not going to give you an entire paragraph creating the ambiance or telling the architecture of the environment that the characters are in. If it's a pillar, I'm just going to say it's a pillar. And Vcandrews wrote much in the same way. Simplify. But that's not to knock authors that do. I know Anne Rice is an amazing writer, and I'm a huge fan of her works, and she will take an entire paragraph to give you all of the beautiful details, and they'll completely engulf you into the environment that these characters are in, and I absolutely love that. But that's just not my style, and it certainly wasn't Vcandrews' style either. In fact, what she was going for was a fast read. And unfortunately, a lot of the times when you're going for that kind of fast read, you need that story to be very easy to consume and easy to digest, because every single page you're going to have something new and fresh happening, and there's no time to really kind of absorb what happened in the previous page or the previous chapter. And as a result, Flowers in the Attic was easy enough for someone as young as 8 to read and comprehend. So children everywhere across the country, from primary school through high school, are raving about this book. They're reading about this book, and they start like writing book reports on this book. And that's when the adults in our lives actually started to take notice. Okay, you have to remember, we're Gen X. You can say, oh, you were latchkey kids, so you had keys on a lanyard around your neck. But it's so much more than that. Our parents literally had to have televised PSAs to remind them that we existed, and they might want to unlock the door and let us in at 10 o'clock at night. Honestly. So if we went to our parents and we're like, oh, I want to read this book, they would be like, fine, honey, just go read it outside. They didn't know what we were reading. But when the teachers started to figure out what we were reading, we started seeing book bans pop up across the country. And Flowers in the Attic was banned in several counties, like I said, across the country. But of course, that just made it the forbidden fruit. So it went from being this pop culture phenomenon, and it exploded into like the stratosphere and kind of became the defining book of our generation. Everybody, every Gen X knows who Vcandrews is, and every Gen Xer, well, probably the majority of Gen Xers, have read Flowers in the Attic. And if they haven't read it, they know of it. So when I hear people saying, and again, your book reviews are totally valid. You know, art is subjective. Like what you like, don't like what you don't like, and express that freely. But when I hear people say things like, oh, this book is trash, who's reading it? So Lifetime picks up the options to make Flowers in the Attic into a movie. And Cleo, it actually has a cameo in the movie. But what we didn't know is when she had that cameo, she had been diagnosed and was battling cancer. Now this is a point in Cleo's life where she has arrived. She is popping off. And she's going out, and she's being social, and she's flirting for fun, and she bought her own home, and she's just living her best life. And so she doesn't want people to know that she has cancer, whether it be because she didn't want those, you know, those there for the grace of God go eye looks, or because she didn't want to be taken care of anymore, or she just wanted to enjoy her found success and fame and freedom. Now, unfortunately, she would not live to see the premiere of her film. On December 19th, 1986, she lost her battle with breast cancer. At this point, she had completed 3 novels in the Dollinger family saga, and she had already started and got quite a way through with the final 2. And her publishers, they had dollar signs in their eyes, and they felt like if they announced that she was dead, their stock options were going to plummet. And what were they going to do with these final 2 books? So they decided to keep her death a secret from her fans and from the public. And they hired a ghostwriter to finish the final 2 novels. Now, it wasn't until 1990 that the IRS dropped a bombshell story, and it hit the news that they were going after the Vcandrews estate for almost $1 million in back taxes. And that forced her publishers to come out and say, oh yeah, she's dead, and we've got a ghostwriter writing under her name. Now, I kind of remember when this happened. By 1990, I had kind of graduated from reading things like Vcandrews to and Judy Blume, to reading things more sophisticated, more Anne Rice and Stephen King. I'm definitely into that horror genre, you know what I'm saying? But I remember the news talking about how she had a ghost writer, but for some reason I was under the impression that there were multiple writers and that there was never a person named Vcandrews to begin with, that it was just like a franchise deal. Yeah, I was so wrong. Like, no, there was one ghostwriter. He goes by the name of Andrew Niederman, and he has continued to write under the name Vcandrews. Today, the Vcandrews franchise has sold over 102 million copies worldwide. The Vcandrews estate is worth $5.2 million and continues to generate revenue today, 35 years after her death. So I know that the term cult classic refers to films. Now, I would never compare the 1987 Lifetime film or the 2014 Lifetime film under the title Flowers in the Attic a cult classic. As a matter of fact, I think that Lifetime movies are trash. I think that they're shallow, they lack character development, they're rushed, and the writing tends to be condescending to the viewer. Look, the Ferris wheel, it's a circle. That's just me though. If you like Lifetime films, if you like Hallmark films, I love that for you. If you think Flowers in the Attic was a trash book, that's totally valid too. We can still kick it. We're just not going to watch Lifetime or read Vcandrews. That's all. So that is all I have for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. And maybe you'll do this little lady a favor and hit that subscribe button. I will be back next week where I talk about some other historical event. Let me know if you have any suggestions down in the comments. Until then, remember, you are valid, you are worthy, and you are loved.